Okay, I'm going to jump right into this. I wasn't sure if I was live before, but now I think that I am. Okay, I'm going to jump right into this. And I could hear myself even. So we have confirmation that I am live. Hi, I'm Megan, and I have a little business called Hipstitch Academy. And I teach sewing online. I teach sewing in person here where I live in the Catskills. And every month I go live to teach how to make a certain piece of clothing or an accessory. Tonight we are making the Lulu Lounge Pants. This is a pattern that I've taught for a really, really long time. It's the first beginner clothing that I introduce to new sewers. There is a little bit of fit, not a whole lot. It's still an elastic waist, but it's a great introduction to making clothes that fit you. Sorry, I just lost my screen. Okay. So hopefully you saw on my website, I made a video for what do you do once you download this Hipstitch Academy pattern. So there's a video showing you how to tape it together properly. And then I also made a video to show you how to cut the fabric. So hopefully you saw that as well. I am going to show you in this overhead view cutting the fabric. I have a giant mess here in my overhead view. And I'm going to show you how to cut the fabric. I'm not going to actually cut it because I already cut it and I didn't want to waste the pieces that I cut for the video, but I'm going to show you a couple different cutting scenarios, and this will also depend on the size of your pants. So let me just check one thing. Just trying to see what happened because I can't at the moment see if there's anyone watching or if there's any questions or comments. So I kind of want to find that. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. I think it's working. All right. So let's make a little bit more sense of this pile that I have going on right here and show you how to cut the fabric. Okay. So a couple things I wanted to talk about regarding fabric. Now I'm just going to cut this little extra bit off. Okay, I have 2 bolts of fabric here. I have one bolt that is showing us fabric that is 58 inches wide. So it's 29 here on my cutting mat, but it's doubled because it's on the fold here. So this is a 58 inch wide fabric. And then I have the fabric that I use to cut my lounge pants in. And this is a fabric that is 45 inches wide. Right now it's about 22.5 inches. So there's very different scenarios when it comes to cutting these with these different widths, okay? So on a pair of pajama bottoms where the pant legs are semi-long and skinny, if you're doing a smaller size, in theory, you could get, one of the pattern pieces here and one of the pattern pieces over here. I'm doing a larger size, so I cannot fit them side by side on 58 inch wide fabric. So that is why 3 yards of fabric is needed. However, if you're doing the small, you are likely to be able to not have to use 3 yards of fabric, especially if it's 58 inches wide. You probably would never get it to fit on 44 or 45 inch wide. But yes, on this wider fabric, you probably only need about 1.5 yards. So I just wanted to show you that difference. So when cutting with a narrower fabric, or when using a narrower fabric, I should say, you know, the pant leg is going to fit on the width of the fabric. You need 2 of this piece. It's going to fit on the width of the fabric, and then you're going to have to cut that and get a whole new, you know, opening of, you know, a piece. So you would unroll, or, you know, however you get your fabric, probably be cut, probably wouldn't be on the bolt, but you would pin this on just the way it comes off of the bolt. This is doubled. Nothing needs to be on the fold, but you do need 2 pieces because this is the back leg. You have 2 legs, therefore you need to cut 2. The way that we have the fabric, the wrong sides are touching. You're going to get a left side and you're going to get a right side, and that's exactly what we need. So go ahead and do that. Pin it to your 2 layers of fabric and cut around in the size that you are doing. If you're not sure what size you're doing, refer to the instructions, or even, yeah, it's the first page of the instructions. Really, really simple. Take a hip measurement and it will show you rough, you know, what size you are to make. This is an elastic waist pair of pants. They're not super fitted. So, you know, go easy on yourself. Just kind of get the ballpark of where your hips are. Cut that size. There's my back. Now, pretend I just cut that. Blah, blah, blah. You guys can cut it. Then grab the front piece and put that on the fabric exactly the same way. You'll notice the front piece is narrower than the back piece, which is what we want. The back is going to be a wider piece because it's going to cover your butt, which is probably bigger than your front. They're definitely fairly different in that this curve, which is like your front, down the front from like your waist down to your crotch, this curve will look very different than this curve, which goes down the middle of your butt. Okay? So those are 2 major differences in the back and the front. So I'm pretending that I am going to pin this on. I could even probably use the iron to just iron out my pattern because I've had it folded up in the envelope. That's always a good trick. If you're taping it together, just flip it over where there's no tape, iron it to flatten the pattern out, then pin it onto your fabric and cut it out. And again, this is a cut 2, so that you have 2 front legs, a left and a right, mirror images, as they say. All right, so go ahead and do that. I'm gonna roll my fabric up. If you have a print on your fabric that needs to be right side up, make sure you're paying attention to that. I'm doing this flannel with these zoo animals. I've had this fabric forever, and I decided that I needed a pair of pajama bottoms out of it because that's all I've been wearing is flannel pajamas lately because it's been so cold, and I really like those in the winter. So I'm excited to have these. Anyway, the print of these animals is only going up. So when I cut out my pants, I paid close attention to that. And here we have the pieces. These are the fronts. Oh no, this is one front and one back. So you can see this giant curve, this more mild curve. Anyway, and the animals, this is the top of the pajamas, and the animals are face up. So this is the front and this is the back. Cool. 'Cause So you've got one front and one back that kind of goes together. Right now I have them wrong sides touching. I think I'm gonna set them up so I get right sides touching. So get a front, get a back. There's only one combination that will allow you to get right sides touching and line up this curve. Okay, so I've got one front, one back here, and then my other leg, one and one back, one front, right sides touching. So I want to remind you, if you are watching this right now and you want to sew along and I go faster than you're working, just hit pause and then you will catch up, okay? And then obviously if you have to go, this recording will live here on YouTube so you can watch it again. So don't forget about that. All right, I'm going to pull, oh boy, I hope I have the instructions in here. Yes, I do, great. So if you've downloaded the pattern, you have the instructions, the same as what I'm looking at here. I have a terrible habit of just sewing things together and not following the instructions, even when I wrote the instructions, because there's different ways to do things. So yeah, I'm not going to be lining up this curve. I'm actually going to be lining up the inner leg seam. So literally step one, with right sides together, pin one of the lounge pant fronts to the one of the lounge pants backs along the inner leg edge as shown. So like I said, there's only one combo, so get these guys together and start right up at the top. Let's pin. And as you go, like really align this edge, like move things around. I've got flannel, so things don't like just, you know, scrunch around that great. You really have to place it very intentionally to line up the edge. So that's the inner leg seam. We're gonna do the same thing over here on the other combination of the front and the back. So once again, starting at the top, pin the edge together. And you're going to sew both of these edges with a 1/2 inch seam allowance after you've pinned. And you can finish that edge off any way you like. Tonight I'm not going to be finishing anything. I'm not going to be serging. I'm not going to be zigzagging. I'm going to leave it raw, and then maybe later I will go back and pinking shear it, but that is my plan of attack. I would pinking shear it for you here, but I don't think I have any here handy. So I'll do that later, and you can too if you want, or you can leave it raw. Don't be ashamed about just leaving it a raw edge. Not a big deal. Especially if this is your first sewing project, right? Okay, so let's switch over to this sewing machine camera. There it is. I've got brown thread in my machine because that's what I had on it. And I've even made an extra bobbin. I've got all kinds of colors going on in this fabric, so brown will be just fine. Okay, starting at, I'll just move this back so you can kind of get some context. Here's the curve. I'm starting right here at where the curve starts. So 1/2 inch seam allowance. Always a little back stitch when you start. Just changing my stitch length. And go a little closer so you can see what's happening. Is that better? Is that better? back stitch at the end, and there's one pant leg. All right, I'm gonna grab my other pant leg, and you know what I am gonna do is I'm gonna start at the top and work my way down again. This might mean that your pins are awkward, but I'm just gonna switch them because I want to do starting at the top, so this is the top of the pants, this is the curve, and then I'm starting in the same exact spot. So next step on these pants is sewing the other side. So we've just sewn this side, and now we're going to sew the outer leg seam. And if your outer leg seams don't perfectly line up, force them to line up, starting at the top, which is up here. I just got it sideways because of the way my table is. I'm pinning, and notice how I'm pinning so that the ball of the pin is hanging off the edge. This is a great way to pin because then it doesn't matter which side. I could sew on this side and I could sew on this side and I would see the ball of the pin. Eleanor is asking what size stitch length I'm using. And on my machine, it's the default. Oh, no, I didn't do the default. Right, I changed it because it felt like it was really small. So I changed it to 3.5. My default is 2.5 millimeters, and so I changed it to 3.5 because I don't think it will affect the integrity of this stitch, and it just goes through a little faster. And it's just a straight stitch. And for me, I use the edge of the foot. I have my needle centered, my sewing machine needle centered, and I use the edge of the foot at the edge of the fabric to give me approximately a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So there's that side pinned. Everything we do in twos until we put the pant legs together. So same deal over here, start at the top. Oh my gosh, you guys, I think I did something fatal here. I did. This is live, folks. I just sewed my back to my back and my front to my front. Holy cow. How did I do that? Just make sure I did that. Yeah, I totally did. Okay, great. So now I'm seam ripping. Who wants a lesson in seam ripping? These pants are gonna be great, but they would have been wonky had I not noticed that. Oh my gosh, I blabbed and blabbed and blabbed about fabric, and I don't know, I'm rushing, I think. All right, so seam ripping. Get that first part where you backstitched, and then if your fabric is pretty strong, you can probably do this technique of ripping the seam out. Oh, that's the other benefit of 3.5 millimeters is I can easily rip that out. Well, easier than 2.5. Wow, I was like, wow, these are really laying super flat and everything's lining up. And then I'm like, I don't think that's correct. I'm wondering, do I just have 4 backs? Let's take a look here. No, because that's my front. And that is my back. Yeah, see, they are very different. Okay, folks. Starting again. As soon as I get this apart. Hopefully you did it right. I mean, I said the correct thing. I just didn't do it on my own. Do you all see my beautiful seam ripper? I love this. So Eleanor is asking how they fit together for the same pieces. They fit together really nicely because, when I should have known that they were like, and that's actually how I figured it out, is that they fit because they're literally the same piece. So I have 2 fronts sewn together and 2 backs sewn together, and I need to have a front and a back, and they shouldn't go together as nicely as they did. So watch this. So this is definitely my front. So if I have my front on here, actually I'm going to put a back on first. Let's grab the back with a larger curve. And there we go. Giant curve. And then the front, this is the one that goes with it. This is what goes together. And then everybody thinks, well, why doesn't that match up? They shouldn't match up. This is very different from this, which is why I should have paid closer attention and not sewn it together. But no harm in quickly doing that over. Especially if you're sewing with me, you can catch up with me. Alright, so let's pin that inner leg seam together. And they are the same length, so they go down and end at the same point down here. It's just that curved part is very different. Alright. You know what, I'm really glad I figured that out and then I didn't try to like sew them together and then just completely have it all messed up. Alright, there's one. There's the other back. There's the curve. Very different curve, but match up the inner leg seam and pin together. I do like this fabric a lot. Alright, so once again, balls of the pins are hanging off the edge so that you can sew on either side. That makes sense when you bring it to the sewing machine, because you always want to have the fabric over on the left side so you're not trying to get it to fit through the awkward little hole in the sewing machine. Alright, so back to the sewing machine. Let's do this again. Starting with the curve. That doesn't line up this time at all. Start here. And sew down to the bottom. Okay. Following the instructions, we are going to turn one of our pant legs right side out. Doesn't matter which one. Oh, no, just kidding. We didn't sew the outer leg seam. Outer leg seam time. So if you flip it over and put the front on top, you'll see that it's smaller, and you're going to move it over so that the outer seams line up. So same thing, just keep the edges together. And pin all the way down to the bottom. If one is longer than the other, don't worry about it. You can fix that when you hem it. All right, so there's one pinned. Starting at the top. Slightly off again. I just cut it a little weird. That's okay. And sew these together. And I want you to start at the top and work your way down to the bottom, just like we did on the inner leg seam. Warned. Quick bobbin change. So here I've got a little bit of discrepancy, and I am going to just even it out. That's the bottom hem. And same thing, starting at the top. Work your way down. Little discrepancy. I'm gonna even it out. Don't get stressed out about these. These are not meant to be perfect. You can make them work without them being perfect. All right, so next instruction really does say now to turn one right side out. So I've got one pant leg that's right side out, and now I've got one pant leg that's inside out, and the one that's right side out needs to go inside the other one because you need to get right sides together. So literally just stuff the pant leg inside until you get to the bottom. And then put them upright so you can see. So you kind of have this U on the pair that's right side out, and then you have a U on the one that's inside out. Get the middle of the U together. Open up that seam allowance and pin. And from the center, you're going to work your way up and pin it the whole way. So align the U. This is obviously, photographed in the instructions, but I do these live streams so you can see in real life what is happening. So this side of the U is pinned. And now this side. And as always, I'm making sure that the edges align. Until I get up to the other side. Okay, so just to get a shot of what's happening. This is the U that we are going to sew. This is the U that's pinned. Now we're going to sew it to sew the left leg to the right leg. Got some pins here. I'm going to put back in the pin cushion. There's my U. I will start up here. This is such a great pattern just to have, and you can make these pajamas over and over. I probably, no exaggeration, have about 10 pair in my wardrobe. I have probably now 5 winter and about 5 spring, summer. It's all I really wear to sleep in. You can make it out of knit, you can make it out of flannel, you can make it out of quilters, cotton. I have some rayon ones that I really like. They're super flowy. A little more dressy, I guess, when it comes to pajamas. All right, so there's the U. One of the things that I like to do with the U is just sew it twice. This is the crotch of the pants, and beneficial to sew that 2 times. So it's just sewing on the exact same line of stitching. So now that we've got those sewn together, we're going to pull one leg out of the other. And you can see it's kind of already looking like pajamas. I'm going to quickly trim some threads here. And I'm going to start working on the waistband. So I've got some elastic. My elastic is 3/4 inch wide. Yeah. So I have 3/4 inch wide fabric, elastic. So my first step is to fold this waistband down 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to fold it down 1 inch. And this is because I have 3/4 inch elastic. So basically you want to make it about the second fold about 1/4 inch wider than the elastic you're going to use. So for 3/4 inch elastic, 1/2 inch, then 1 inch, and pin. And if you want, a nice little trick that I use is I'll cut off a little piece of elastic just to kind of like spot check it as I pin it all the way around. So I'll do 1/2 and then a full. And yes, I'm kind of eyeballing it. I would grab your ruler, or at least make sure you've got your little piece of elastic, and then pin like I'm doing here. And then you're gonna just move around the waistband. So 1/2 inch. And you know what, on these seams here on the side, you can open up the seam. And if you start to kind of go rogue and not do 1 inch for that second fold, things will start to look a little funky. So just double check with your ruler. Here's another seam. I'm going to open it up, fold 1/2 inch. And fold 1 inch. And you can kind of skip around like I'm doing, because then in between where you skipped around tends to kind of go a little easier, whatever's in between. So I'll skip over to this seam again. Fold 1/2 inch and a full inch, pin it, and then you kind of see in the middle here it folds pretty easily. Here. And then the last section here, it's pretty easy to get. One of the nice things about flannel, cotton flannel, is it doesn't fray a whole lot. Like quilter's cotton would fray a lot more than flannel does, so you don't really have to worry about finishing the edges. Now the waist is going to look a lot bigger than your waist because obviously you haven't put your elastic in yet. So don't worry about that. And now I'm going to go ahead and sew the channel for the elastic. So I'm going to sew along this bottom edge. However, the really important thing that you have to remember is don't sew it all the way shut. You need to leave roughly 3 fingers at least open. So I'm going to signify that with 2 pins here and 2 pins here. And that's where I'm going to leave it open so that I can insert my elastic when it's time. Okay? So heading over to the sewing machine. I've got my little opening, and I'm going to start here at the opening, and you're sewing 1/4 inch from the bottom fold line right here. Take your pins out as you go. Just keep feeding it through. Adjust what you're sewing. Should be coming back. Oh, there it is, the double pin to remind me to stop sewing there. All right, I'm gonna leave those pins in so I know where my opening is. And I am going to take a look at my sewn waistband. And then what I'm going to do is take my elastic, and you just don't even worry about measuring your elastic. Wrap it around where the top of your pants are going to be and stop right about here so that you have to stretch the elastic in order for it to fit you. So it should be your waist measurement minus about 4 inches, because you want to have the elastic stretch when you're wearing it. For some reason, my sound never syncs up with my mouth, and that's super annoying. So I'll take that off now. Okay. This is where your handy dandy safety pin comes in. Don't try to put the elastic through without it. Hook the safety pin onto the end of the elastic. And now I know where my opening is, so I can take my pins away. You're going to be very carefully inserting. Let's see if I can get a little close up here. Inserting the elastic into the channel and pushing the safety pin. And as you do that, it's going to drag the elastic through the waistband. Now, be really careful to keep an eye on the end of the elastic so it doesn't slip inside when you're not looking. Okay. So you get the idea of what's happening. Sliding the pants along, and if you get to a seam and it feels like you can't go through, just do your best to kind of wiggle past the seam allowance. You'll get it. And it's starting to scrunch up, which is the point of all of this. So I've still got a lot hanging out, but I'm going to keep an eye on it so I don't suck it into the waistband. There we go. Okay, it's getting shorter. Be gentle until you get the safety pin to the opening. Okay, so once it's there, remove. And here's what we're going to do real quick. We're going to safety pin the two ends together because I just want to double check that my elastic has not become twisted. So I'm going to kind of work it around and make sure I have no twists in the elastic. And because my safety pin is still here, it's still sticking out. Looks like I am not twisted. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. Put the ends together here, and then that's what I'm going to sew. And I'm going to sew forward, backwards, forward, backwards. So pull the elastic out as far as you can. I've sewed that 4 times, pull it off, break my thread, and then go ahead and lose the end into the channel. And you still have your little hole where you put the elastic in, so you're going to pin that closed and sew it so there's no hole there anymore. So start where you left off. I'm just going to trim that little thread. Oh, there's another thread. There's another thread. And sew to where the stitching you meet the stitching that's already there. Try really hard not to sew onto your elastic when you're doing this last little bit. If you do, it's not a big deal, but try not to. And there you go. Now your elastic is in. Cut any dangling threads, and we'll take a look at our pajama bottoms. Put my safety pin away so I don't lose that. And we've got a nice elasticized waist on our flannel pajamas. Turn them right side out, and the only thing that's left is the hem. Those look great. down to the bottom. Now, if you are a short person and you are making these for the first time and you want to try them on and maybe get rid of some length, go for it. You always want to keep the pants cut 1.5 inches, I would say, longer than where you want them to fall, because what you're going to do is 2 3/4 inch folds at the bottom. 3/4 plus 3/4 is 1.5 inches. So if you want your pants to end here, you know, you try them on and you put a pin, you know, at the bottom where you want them to end. And they're like ridiculously long. You can cut some fabric off, but cut off leaving 1.5 inches extra, because you need to fold that up to hem it. Okay. But I know that I'm a tall person and I've made these a bunch of times, and so I am not going to cut anything off. I cut off a little bit to level them out, but you know, I might just do a little more, just so they're even. So like, yeah, at this point, if you're like looking at the bottom and you're like, that is not at all even, just even them out. See, it's a little uneven over here, so I'm just going to do this. Boom. Okay. So I have turned them right side out, and I could hem it like that and do that all the way around, but it might be easier. No, I'm going to do it like this. So you can see I'm on the back, 3/4 inch fold, 3/4 inch fold, pin, flip to the other side, same thing, 3/4 inch fold, 3/4 inch folds, and you'll see the other edges are just going to kind of go into place. So kind of move to this side, open up the seam allowance, do a 3/4 inch and a 3/4 inch, and it should align with what you did in the front and the back of that pant leg. So add a pin. And then if you feel like you could use some pins in between, go ahead and use that. And then on this other side, same thing, open up the side seam allowance, do a 3/4 inch and a 3/4 inch. And yes, use a ruler. I'm just eyeballing this. But grab your ruler to make sure that you're making the right size folds to do this hem. All right, so there's everything pinned around the hem of this leg. Same over here. I'll open it up so you can kind of see what I'm doing. 3/4 inch fold, 3/4 inch folds, stick a pin. Flip it over, 3/4 inch fold, 3/4 inch folds, pin it so it stays, and then move it, open up the seam allowance, 3/4 inch fold, 3/4 inch fold, stick a pin in it, and add more pins if you like. And then other side where this seam allowance is, open up the seam allowance, 3/4 inch fold, 3/4 inch fold, pin it, and oh my goodness, look at these. All we have to do is sew this hem. And I've got some new pajamas to wear tonight. Toasty warm and soft, soft, soft. Okay, so there they are. I'm gonna move my camera view so you can see it. Now, most machines have a little thing that can be removed. So you can put the pant leg right over the free arm of your sewing machine. So here's my pinned pant leg. And I can put that right over it. However, I can't see what I'm sewing. So I think what it's going to be the easiest thing to do is very carefully turn everything inside out. Remember, your pins are in there, so that's why I'm saying be very careful. So now you can slip it on. You can lower your presser foot, and you're all ready to go. Just make sure if your pins are in the wrong direction, as mine are, you just leave yourself a lot of room. Stop way before so you can take the pin out. And you're just sewing a big circle. When you come back around, before you meet up with it, why don't you snip your threads? Just a nice thing to do while you're there. And then make sure you keep the stitching that's already there. You want to keep that in your sights and run right into it. And back stitch on top of it. Perfect. Snip and snip. And now you have your hemmed pant leg. Okay, I'm going to turn the other pant leg inside out carefully so I don't hurt myself with pins. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Slip it on. Do a little back stitch, which isn't probably necessary because you're going to come right back to where you started. But it's habit, I guess. Back stitch, trim, threads, and there you have it. Turn them back right side out, hold them up. Sometimes it's hard to tell which is the front and which is the back, but there we go. And now I've got my new jump pants. Alright, hope you enjoyed tonight's live stream. Hope you made some pants with me. And if you didn't, hope you get a chance to. If you're looking for the pattern, it's linked down below. You can download that so you can cut everything out. Size, lots of different sizes. And if you have any questions, you know where